Go lay down. Oh my God.
She does look hilarious when she like pops up in
I
the
know.
corner and she's like,
I am so regretful that I opened the Ring app. Oh, there she is.
There she is.
Go lay down. Or sit right next to me. That's fine too. Okay. She's gonna bark probably. And
it's gonna be today is just gonna be the episode of dogs. So
yeah, I'll mute my mic when I'm not talking until she goes and lays down because
vice versa.
I set her off. So okay.
All right, let's do this. Welcome to Tell Me About It, a podcast by SLPs for everybody. My name is Francie.
And my name is Maggie.
And today we are continuing our AAC conversation in what are some of the roadblocks into accessing AAC? There's tons.
Yes. This definitely, one of the reasons we wanted to spend I think we're going to spend probably four or five episodes that we have planned out talking about AAC and some of the issues with it is because there do seem to be so many roadblocks to implementation and to acquisition, like to even getting your hands on AAC for a student that needs it.
Yeah. Just add that to all of the other red tape that our families with disabilities have to deal with, and it just seems like one more thing on a really big pile. And so we are here to talk about the roadblocks and maybe any ways that we can help you get around them.
Yeah, so like I was kind of saying a second ago, there's kind of two main columns that we're going to talk about today. One is the roadblock to acquisition of a device, things that we have noticed in our own practice, and maybe some ways around it or some resources that we are aware of that can help with it. And then two would be roadblocks to implementing AAC and why it doesn't always seem to quote unquote take, why it doesn't always seem to click with kids, and some troubleshooting / fixes that can maybe help with that as well. So let's get into it.
Buddy's starting to growl again already.
This is the dog episode.
This is the dog episode.
Yeah, both of our dogs are going crazy my dog whose little head popped up a second ago was going crazy because I got a package delivered and the mailman rang the doorbell, which I didn't hear through my headphones. And then I mistakenly opened my Ring app and it played the doorbell chime again and made her go crazy. And then your dog is freaking out because your neighbors are getting some delivery.
Yeah, Buddy has like a lookout spot in one of our front bedrooms where he just likes to sit and watch the window. And so our neighbors are getting like a delivery or something today. They're doing something outside and Buddy won't have it. Yeah. So not in his neighborhood. No way, no how. So anyways, he's protecting our home right now. So
yes, he's on guard duty. Diamond finally laid back down. So she's in her sunspot on her bed. She has nothing to bark about. It's not going to stop her though. There he is.
All right.
All right. So let's talk about some of the big roadblocks to acquisition of an AAC device. What are some of the ones, Francie, that you feel come up a lot for you?
I think knowing where to start and who to talk to about getting an AAC device is the big one. At our last school, I remember thinking I don't know how to do this and I'm the professional here. And so I think there's a little bit of just not knowingness in new professionals, definitely, about what are the pathways that I need to take as a professional to help this family and who do I need to talk to? Because I didn't know then. Now that I've switched districts and there's systems in place, I know now what I need to do, but I didn't then. And so, yeah, just knowing who to talk to first is a huge one.
Yes. And well, in your defense, or anybody who doesn't know where to start, because I went through the same exact experience the first year that we worked together at that school, of just not knowing where to turn, kind of knowing generally what to do, but in practice, not knowing actually who to contact or actually what website to go to. And it kind of depends on what you want. So it depends on if you're going through Medicaid, if you're going through private insurance, or if you're going private pay and just going to outright buy a device or an iPad with AAC software on it, which is also an option. And there's pros and cons to each option, and there's different levels of cost and family involvement for each option. There's different levels of time that it's going to take for each one. So maybe we could start with just like the most straightforward, which is just simply outright buying a device or an iPad or another kind of tablet. It doesn't have to be like an Apple iPad. This is a good option if you have the means to just buy a tablet that is going to be dedicated to the use of AAC for a child and purchase the software that goes along with it. And the softwares range in price too. If you have the means to do that and to like repair or repurchase the hardware and software if something were to happen to it, like it gets dropped, it gets, the screen gets shattered, it gets lost, et cetera, then by all means, feel free. But yeah, there's kind of a couple of cons that go along with that too.
Yeah, that can be cost prohibitive. It can be if you don't have consistent access to electricity, that can also make it pretty prohibitive to charging devices.
Or Wi-Fi too.
Or
like,
Wi-Fi to do your updates. Yeah, there's some barriers within that. Even more cost prohibitive are dedicated devices to outright pay, because while an iPad, expensive, is still thousands of dollars cheaper than some of the dedicated devices.
Yes. Even I use an iPad a lot for like work stuff. So I have a personal iPad. I think the device itself was like $900 when I bought it 2 years ago, which is a lot. Like that's expensive. And I am an adult who doesn't like use the iPad constantly to speak, like as a piece of durable medical equipment, or DME, which is probably an acronym we'll use a lot during this discussion. But like you and I have both seen, for lack of a better like phrase, the absolute snot get beat out of these devices. Like kids, I have a kid who climbs on her AAC device right now. Like it's an iPad with a stand-up case, and she will fully put her body weight on it. And they've gotten stepped on. We've seen them thrown. We've seen them dropped. We've seen them like covered in Cheeto fingers during lunch and all kinds of stuff. Like these devices get put through the ringer. And so if you have something like an iPad that is relatively inexpensive based on what we're talking about here, but still like close to $1,000, the dedicated devices are sometimes triple, quadruple, 5 times that even. It's wild.
Or more.
Or more. And that is usually due to the fact that like if there's an alternative access method. So I think the most expensive devices tend to be the eye gaze devices. Yeah, so if you have a student that's needs a device equipped with that hardware and software and probably a mount to go with it on a wheelchair or something like that, then yeah, you're looking at easily 20 grand out of pocket. So understandably, a lot of people choose to go through insurance.
Yeah, a lot of people choose to go through insurance. Insurance will cover, you have to do, and this is kind of the red tapey side of things, because when you go through insurance, there's always red tape. And so getting an evaluation that's compliant with your insurance standards, picking devices that are also compliant with your insurance and that also feature match to your child is another thing. One other kind of prohibitive aspect of going through insurance is that you only get a new one like every 5 to 10 years or something crazy. 5 to 7 maybe. I think 10's a little hyperbolic.
I think it's 5 to 7.
But that's a lot of technology advances and decays in 5 years, and so that comes with its own issues with
Yeah.
at the end of that route, you're working with a dinosaur device that might not be super reliable, but you have to play the game because 'cause you're playing with insurance, and so AAC can be really tough.
Yeah. No, seriously, like think about, so maybe like a analog to this would be our phones. So I like iPhones. I have an iPhone and I replace mine about every 4 to 5 years. But by that like 3.5 year mark, I mean, it feels like a dinosaur. Like it's starting to run slower. It's starting to not be able to update stuff. It's starting to, and part of that is planned obsolescence, which blows, but that's the world we live in. So yeah, think about like if you relied on a piece of technology that you could not replace until like 5 years later, and how fast things move technologically. It's just, I think this is a place where insurance really needs to catch up, and advocacy groups that lobby and that kind of work on the policy and insurance side of things would, like, it would be great for them to be lobbying for this. And I'm sure that they are, because this is a common problem for AAC users, is that we'll have a dedicated device that's 4.5 years old and it starts shutting down at 40% battery, or it starts like freezing up every 20 minutes and you have to like do a hard restart. And that takes another 30 minutes for it to like boot back up. So it can be really, really disruptive to a student's school day when you have a device that's on its absolute last legs. And that's just once you even have the device. Insurance will replace it every 5 years.
I
But
think I think one of the things that is most helpful in the acquisition process is finding people who are very good. Like this is all they do. There are resources in the different areas that are unique to helping families with that, whether that's like the AT department or the assistive technology department at a hospital, or like maybe they have like a local university usually has some type of assessment protocol or AAC lab that can help or whatever. And so getting connected to those community resources can oftentimes be very helpful in kind of trudging through the red tape of any type of durable medical equipment acquisition.
yes, 100%. Because if it's hard for us and this is our job and like what we went to school for and what we do, then yeah, if you are a person that like does not work in the field of disability or special education or anything, and you're suddenly find yourself in the process of trying to navigate this, it's really like, it's like a labyrinth. It's really, really confusing. So, but there are people out there, like you were saying, and there are groups out there. I was like, bodies, systems. No, there are like groups out there that also are dedicated to getting devices into the hands of kids that need them. So that's awesome. Once you kind of get the ball rolling and get the paperwork started, find out that your insurance will cover all or part of it. How long, in your experience, Francie, does it take for the kid to actually get a device in their hand?
My most recent experience was about 6 weeks of just pre-paperwork, and we are still waiting for the device to arrive. So in all, probably about 12 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of what we're at right now, but it can go longer. It can go shorter, but that's kind of where we've been at recently.
Yeah, I would say that's been my experience too. And sometimes I'll start with a student or a private client kind of in the middle of the process. Like they started it with somebody else and now I'm picking up services with them. And so if if someone says like, oh, they were evaluated for a device, I'm like, okay, it could be anywhere between, if they were evaluated already and got approved for it, it could be anywhere between like 3 to 6 months that we actually see the device in their hand. So 6 months is for sure on the longer end, but I would say probably about 3-ish, like 2 or 3, 8 to 12 weeks maybe. Yeah, it takes a long time.
Yeah, and time can also be one of those factors, you know.
Mhm.
My goodness.
Yes. Part of the reason the evaluation process and approval process takes so long is that some insurances will want to see really consistent data that shows improvement with the device before saying like, okay, we'll cover it. So and some insurances also want to see that you've tried low tech before moving to high tech, which would not be my professional recommendation, but insurance did not ask me. So, but yeah, there are a few resources. And so again, we are both in the great Show Me state. We're in the state of Missouri. I am in the St. Louis metro area, and there are some places around here. St. Louis Children's does a lot of AAC evaluation. And part of that is because they're one of the only Medicaid approved evaluation sites. So if you're a person with Medicaid, you have to go to a specific location that is like under the Medicaid umbrella to be able to receive a device using that insurance, which is another roadblock because for my region, like the eastern half of the state, I think there's one at Mizzou in Columbia, Missouri, which is mid-Missouri, one in St. Louis here. I think there's one in Cape Girardeau, but I'm not 100% sure on that, maybe. And that's it for the eastern half of the state. So if you live in Rolla, your best bet is to be driving up to Columbia or driving to St. Louis. So like you can imagine that the wait lists for these places are long because they're serving a massive region.
I remember I had a family that was trying to get in with Mizzou. This was last school year, and they said they had like an 18-month waiting list or something like that. It was nuts.
Yeah.
Here in Springfield, we have Arc of the Ozarks, which has been a wonderful resource for AAC and other developmental supports. But we have a lot of families that go to Mizzou because Mizzou is only about 2 hours from here, 2.5. And so, yeah, Mizzou is one of those universities that does the evaluations. Bless them. You know, you went to Mizzou.
I did go to Mizzou. This is actually Mizzou. I think it's the hospital.
It's their hospital
University
system.
Hospital. Yep. But I think if memory serves, which it's been 6 years, but I think the person there taught my AAC class in grad school. I'm pretty sure, but I could be wrong with that. But yeah, and it is awesome, and I love that because that's the state university, so they do a lot for services, and also Boone County in general. I lived in Columbia and Boone County for a really long time. I went to Mizzou, so I know a lot about the services there. Boone County in general has really awesome disability and like family support services, and part of that is due to their proximity to the university. So there's just a lot of resources there. But yeah, for more rural areas, or even Springfield, like it's not Springfield, the city of Springfield isn't necessarily like a rural area, but the places surrounding it are. And the closest metropolitan center is like Springfield, and then like Kansas City, which
Kansas
is
City would be closest. Yeah. Which Kansas City also has some really great resources through like Ability KC is one. I'm trying to think of who else. They've got Children's Mercy up there. They've got, and there's also like several private practices up there that do AAC evals.
Oh, very cool.
I went to school in Kansas City and lived there for 6 years, so I'm also familiar with
yes.
what's going on there. But yeah.
So that's another thing is that like and for our families that like both of the parents work, or maybe it's one parent with multiple children, one of whom has high support needs, they're looking at getting AAC, and this is going to be like shortest a day trip to drive to a city that's a couple of hours away. For that, you need reliable transportation, you need money for gas, you need a place to stay if you're going to be there. Like if your appointment is at 8 o'clock in the morning, you might need to stay the night before. Like, so these are very, very like cost prohibitive and resource prohibitive things. So that's a bummer. It's
big bummer.
And that actually just like made my heart kind of drop. Like listing out all of these things, I was like, okay. So those are some of the pretty obvious roadblocks to acquisition. What about once we actually have the device, glory be, it finally arrived, and it doesn't seem to be like clicking or taking with the kid. So we're talking now like roadblocks to implementation. What are some of those that you see come up, France?
I think the biggest one that I see is that somebody on this child care team is not buying in to the AAC experience. And I've seen this go both ways. I've seen parents not be fully involved in this process, and I've also seen school teams not be fully involved in this process. So it's not just one person here or one group of people who can be the not necessarily anchor, but kind of holding up the team, right, for like successful implementation. And so, yeah, if we don't have good buy-in from everybody who supports this child, implementation's gonna be harder, right? We said this statistic every episode that we've talked about AAC, and I'm gonna say it again. For a child who uses AAC to get an equivalent amount of exposure that an 18-month-old gets to oral language, it would take 84 years if they only do exposure with a speech therapist 30 minutes 2 times a week. Holy mackerel. So
yeah,
if our whole team is not on board and we are not implementing this in all areas, we are going to see it take longer for it to quote unquote click or just to be used. I think good communication habits are so vital in developing those habits while you are learning AAC will only make AAC implementation more successful. And so if we have any part of that process that's like, oh, well, you know, they're only doing AAC at home and the school team's not supporting it, we're not going to see that carry over into school, right? They've got 7 hours of their day that they're missing that enrichment with their device. So like, hello, that sucks. So
yes, 100%. I actually, you know what? I saw a teacher modeling AAC, and they were doing what we so often do in groups, which is we have multiple devices on the table or desk in front of us that are different softwares, and we're modeling upside down on different softwares for the student. And that's hard, okay? We do it all the time. And it's hard. I'm learning to write upside down now too. That's a tangent. But yeah, I saw this teacher doing it, and I could have kissed them on the mouth. Like I was like, oh my gosh, seeing that level of like dedication and modeling, because I know they were trying to teach a lesson, maintain order in the classroom, which was like a dedicated classroom to kids with high support needs. They were also modeling keywords from their lesson in 2 different softwares at the same time, upside down, because they were facing the kids and the devices were on the desk. Again, could have kissed them on the mouth. It was I was like, I want to give you a trophy. I want to have you talk to all of my teacher friends, because look, this is not about teachers, okay? You guys have enough to deal with. I could not do your job. Part of the reason I love being an SLP is because my groups are small, okay? I don't take groups of kids bigger than like 4. A whole classroom of children that you are trying to differentiate for each one and teach and maintain order and somehow maintain your sanity. I have the utmost respect for you. And then you have us waltzing in there being like, here's an iPad, incorporate it, and then and then leaving, you know. So that's I definitely can empathize with feelings of feelings that are less than happy and friendly about the AAC situation. But yeah, it really, even all of that being said, it does require buy-in and participation from every member of the team.
And it requires training at all levels. I think,
Yes.
once again, this goes back to what you said, where we're just tossing an iPad at a kid and just hope that it like works. What is the background to that is the SLP has to know the systems that they're using. The paras in the room have to know the systems that they're using. The family has to know the systems that they're using. And that takes time, effort, and training. And so if you are either a new SLP or an SLP who's been around for a long time and is new to AAC, like this is a whole new world. And so if you yourself are not 100% in your knowledge of AAC and now you're trying to help teach the school team about how to use this device, golly, that's tough. And so making sure that education is happening for not just the student, but for everybody who's on that team to be on the same page about how the system even works and why it's designed the way it is. I've never taken the LAMP training. I know I would probably hate LAMP less if I actually like paid for the $300 class or whatever and like trained in the system. But it's cost prohibitive. Once again, I have to take PD days to go do that, or pay out of my own pocket for that. And so that's another kind of barrier in implementation, is what does their own experience with that system look like, and do they even know about it, right? If you have never partner assisted scanned and suddenly you have a child who partner assisted scans for their main primary access method and nobody's helping you support, what is happening on this day? Like nobody's having a good time. And so that's where a bunch of breakdown can happen, and that also impacts the child's success and your own success with implementation. So there's my small rant about like, make sure you yourself know, and at least if you cannot go to a training, sit down with the system and explore it and get to know where things are and feel comfortable with how you edit a page set or whatever. So small rant, small tangent, but soapbox is out.
And amen. Like I love that. I am a known LAMP hater, and I'm becoming less of a hater and more of just like a tolerator. I don't hate it. I still don't love it for pre-literate kids or users because the icon system is not...
It's very opaque.
It's not iconic, if you will. Like it doesn't really... Some of them are fine. Like I think the icon for wear clothing is a suit. So like, oh, okay, wearing a suit. But then the icon for... This is kind of an off-topic example, but the icon for Thursday is like a man with a margarita, like Thirsty Thursday. I'm like, this is not what children think about when it's Thursday. So that's not meaningful for them. It's not necessarily appropriate. So I have some issues, and I'm trying to think of like other icons that are kind of messed up, but whatever. We don't need to get into that right now. What my main issue, like practical issue with LAMP, is that it is so difficult for adults to like jump in and be able to use without sitting down and spending time with it, because it's that motor-based system, not necessarily a semantically organized system. And that is a high barrier of entry for certainly a like neurotypical, low support needs adult in this helping profession or caregiver role that is trying to lean into and assist this child in learning. So that's, definitely me and Lamp are making some progress in our relationship, but still not fully on board. So sorry, Lamp.
Sorry, Lamp. I'm warming up to Lamp. I like Lamp for kids for whom Lamp works really well.
Yeah, definitely. And I remember that our friend Chloe, who we had on the podcast a few weeks ago, said that she had a student where the screen went dark. Wasn't that Chloe?
It was me. I have a
Oh, it
kid
was
who's
you.
extremely
Okay, well,
with
we were
her, and
talking
he would
about it with
still
Chloe.
yes, and he was able to navigate his screen died, but the everything else was still working, and so he was able to still, like, use the device because he had the motor patterns memorized, and so which was wild to see.
That rocks.
It was
That
awesome.
rocks.
So
Um,
anyways, lamp got a point that day for me,
yes.
and so
Okay, lamp tangent. Um, okay, another roadblock to implementation that kind of goes along with this personnel aspect that you and I were talking about off mic was setting appropriate expectations for AAC at the beginning. So when a speech therapist says, I think AAC would be appropriate for your kid, let's begin trialing some devices. Or if you get recommended from a pediatrician or other healthcare professional that's like, you guys need to look into AAC, setting appropriate expectations in that moment, in those initial stages, is vital to success down the road, because I think a lot of caregivers go in with expectations that are not necessarily unrealistic, but just incorrect. Like they're just not right for the situation. I don't know if parents are properly educated on how long acquisition of AAC is going to take to get independence, of what to expect expressive wise. Like, are they going into it thinking, okay, like in a few short months, kid is going to be typing full-blown sentences independently, or not? Like it, I think setting those expectations at the beginning, and expectations for their buy-in and their carryover into the home environment as well, of knowing how much of a lift it's going to be for them, is really important too.
everybody's communication is going to look different. And so I think oftentimes we hope that AAC is going to be this like magic, like snake, not necessarily snake oil. I don't know what word I'm going for here, but like the magic thing that like
Yeah.
fixes everything. Um, and it's something that you have to work really hard for. And so it takes effort, it takes time, it takes dedication, and it has wonderful payoff, and it does help so many. But I just hate when I see parents get disappointed
Mhm.
in this journey because it does take so long. And so being clear about everybody's communication looks different. If we can just help them increase any type of communication is forward progress, and that is exciting, and celebrating those wins instead of focusing on well, they're not making grammatical sentences, or they're not doing these things. I always want to look at what they are doing, and so let's celebrate where we're at. And that can sometimes be disappointing, and I hate that for families. But yeah, that clear is kind. And so going in with being like, hey, this is a tool, it's going to take a long time sometimes. It's so easy too to get stuck up on the stories where kids just take to AAC like a duck to water. And I've had those kids that just like, oh, it works so well. And I've had kids on the other end where it's really effortful for them. And so, oh, I'm frozen. There
Oh,
we
you're
go.
back. There we
Yay.
go.
I've had kids on either end of that spectrum, and just being upfront about the fact that like their communication journeys are different, and putting in that time and effort will be worth it regardless of what that outcome is.
Yeah, absolutely. Something that I kind of want to touch on too, which is a little bit, I don't want this to come off in a way that I'm not meaning it to, but we have to remember that kids that are getting AAC or being recommended for AAC have language disorders. Their acquisition of language, and very likely their eventual output of language, is going to be different than a typically developing child, or than what we would expect even with AAC. And that can also vary. So like you were saying, we have some students that maybe the reason that verbal language is not accessible to them is due to a whole body like motor disorder, like cerebral palsy, or like, I'm trying to think of another example. Cerebral palsy would be like the most common, where cognition and language are still relatively typical, what we would expect. But there are a lot of other kids for whom AAC is extremely appropriate that have different neurotypes, that have, yes, they have different bodies and different brains, but they also, their path to language and communication is going to be different. So for those kids, and I'm thinking mostly about kids with severe autism, high support needs autism, maybe kids with Down syndrome that have the motor component, absolutely, but there's also some of the cognitive, some of the language component as well. It's just going to look different. And different doesn't mean bad. It just means we need to set expectations appropriately. Because like you said, Francie, like clarity is kindness. And as hard as it is for clinicians to give like a prognosis sometimes, we need to be truthful with parents about what communication may look like, even with this amazing tool, right? So even if a kid doesn't end up using full sentences, even if their end point is kind of 2 to 3 word phrases, is a bit more telegraphic in nature, that's still more communication than they had without the device. It's still supporting their social relationships. It's still supporting their independence, their ability to get their wants and needs met, their ability to participate in conversations and share experiences with those around them in a way that's reliable and accessible to them. So yeah, it's not a bad thing to remain telegraphic with AAC. It's not a bad thing to never get up to the point of full sentences, because it's still enhancing their life experience and allowing them to connect with the world in a way they wouldn't be able to otherwise.
I think going in with the mindset that AAC is going to magically make communication look more like a typical peer is just undercutting any joy and celebration that could happen in that process. Communication, even for the typical, is very different for everybody. And so making sure that we're not measuring our communicative worth against what is quote unquote normal. I really hate it when we have to write in reports and things like that what a typical peer would be doing, because it just, to me, really cheapens the individualized experience of the person I'm working with. And so that's what I mean when I say like everybody's going to be different and our milestones and our celebrations are going to be different regardless. And that's not cheapening any of that, right? It's all something to be celebrated, right? So
yeah,
just echoing what you're saying there.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to have conversations about disability without getting into that kind of like, this is such a pediatric therapist thing to say, but that like scribble spot territory where it's like, there's this children's book that's like a little scribble spot where it's all of the emotions and colors scribbled into one little spot, and they can separate out each color, but it's about like accepting yourself with all of the emotions and that kind of thing. So we can't really have disability without talking about like every human emotion that comes along with it. And all emotions are allowed and accepted in this conversation, because there is real joy, real happiness, real excitement and love and hope, but there's also real grief and real anger and real disappointment. And those things also have a seat in this conversation as well. So yeah, just the nature of disability is tough sometimes. And when we're talking about something like AAC, it is good to set expectations with caregivers appropriately so that we can go through this process kind of unhindered by the like, oh, well, what if, or the comparison to a typical developing, or just a different AAC user that has a different diagnosis and a different prognosis, you know? Fun times.
Said. Yeah, beautifully said.
Fun times. Okay. Any final thoughts about roadblocks to AAC?
There's a lot of them. Don't let it discourage you. It is such a rewarding path to walk down, even though it can be treacherous occasionally.
Yeah, I agree. It is hard. It is a lot. but it does provide another like avenue to access for making relationships with that person even stronger, allowing them to access different parts of their environment in ways that they couldn't before, and increasing that independence. So it is hard, but it is worth it. And these two therapists, at least, are in it with you for the long haul. So that is all we've got for you on Roadblocks today. We will be back next episode talking about controversies and the history of AAC. This part of speech pathology is not without its controversy. We've touched on things like facilitated communication, spelling to communicate in our telepathy tapes episode, which is from well over a year ago, actually. But yeah, we'll be back next time talking about those things and more on Tell Me About It. In the meantime, you can find us on YouTube and Spotify at Tell Me About It and SLP Podcast. And please do follow us on Instagram at Tell Me About It SLP. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.
Bye.